So buying a property subject to offers incredible benefits to the buyer and sometimes even the seller. It depends on their specific scenarios. So here's a breakdown of who benefits and who does not in each of the following situations. From the seller's point of view, how much you really benefit is on the incredibly quick sale. A sub-2 deal can be incredibly fast, on the order of days or a couple of weeks. The limiting factor is merely going to be the title search. The rest of the paperwork is actually very quick and can be done in a matter of days. If a seller is facing foreclosure or is facing a short sale, the sub-2 deal may be an opportunity for them to get out from underneath a mortgage that they just can't handle anymore. And it can be either a short-term or long-term fix, depending on the deal that they worked out with the buyer. For the buyer, they win because there is low or no money down typically. So if they're taking over that loan by buying it subject to, they typically don't have to put any money other than closing costs. A lot of times they might negotiate that they're paying the seller's closing costs too, sometimes not. There may be an extra equity pay down of some cash infusion, or maybe it's a second loan that they pay over 5 years or something like that. The point is that the investor frequently has an opportunity to buy a property for little or no money down and get into a very good property. It allows that buyer to get into the property without using traditional financing. Maybe they don't qualify, or maybe they just don't want to qualify for another loan. I can tell you that buying a property subject to, for me, can be easier than buying it with a conventional loan, and it costs a lot less money. Now, there are some challenges. The first time you do it, it's a lot more difficult because there's nobody to walk you through it. There's nobody to hold your hand. Once you've done it a couple of times, you realize actually it's not that difficult. Another benefit to the buyer when you're buying subject to is the balance on that loan might be high, but you're going to benefit from equity appreciation over time. So you've got that fixed loan, and now you're just going to start making money over time in your net worth. And now I like to say you can't eat your net worth, but it's on paper, and it has increased your net worth for you and your family. Maybe sometime in the future you sell that, or it just continues to be a cash flowing rent. What about tenants? Well, I tell you what, there are not a lot of rental properties in the market right now. And if you sell a property subject to the existing mortgage and somebody else buys it, there's a good chance they're buying it to turn it into a rental property, which just added one more rental property to the neighborhood. That's good for tenants because now they have a place to move, and maybe it starts to bring rents down for the tenant community. Now let's talk about who does not benefit. First, from the seller, the big thing there is that the loan remains in their name. They are legally liable to pay off that note. No matter what happens, even if the buyer defaults, it's in their name and it's their credit hit. Loss of property control. What do I mean by that for the seller? So they have transferred title, signed the deed over to the new buyer. They can no longer control that property, but their name is still on the mortgage. And the last thing is that due on sale clause. Now here's the thing with the due on sale clause. It's not a legal risk. It was just a contractual agreement between the bank and the seller when they first bought the house. And it just said, hey, buyer, first owner, if you ever sell it to owner number 2, you owe us money for that loan. You have to pay it off. The due on sale clause. The money is due. Well, they don't have to execute that clause. They have the privilege to do it. The bank does, but they don't have to do it. And the thing is, it's not like you're going to go to jail. You're not going to get fined. You didn't do anything illegal. All you did is say, well, I sold it. Are you going to call the note? Yes or no? Now, as long as that bank keeps getting paid, they're going to be okay with it typically, right? And they're not going to call the note. Now let's move on to the buyers. Same thing for the due on sale clause. Let's say that the seller goes and calls the bank and says, hey, I sold it. I think you should call the note. They could. And if that happens, the bank could call the note. And now you've got 30 days to sell it, refinance it, come up with $200,000, whatever the case is. And that can be awkward. That's not why you bought it sub-2 in the first place, right? So that can be a downside. Again, nothing illegal. It's just that, hey, there was a contractual agreement and they may choose to execute that contractual clause, in which case you could find yourself on the short end of that stick where you need to pay some money. The other downside is that there may be unfavorable loan terms in there buried somewhere. It depends. It may be favorable loan terms, may be unfavorable. In today's day and age, if I were to buy a property sub-2 with a 3% fixed rate, holy cow, what a great loan term that is, right? Well, what if on the other hand, it was somebody who just bought last summer and they got 7.5%, right? And now I'm buying that sub-2, boo-hoo, I'm crying because I got bad rate. And the only way to fix that is to refinance, which is going right back to where we were before. I may have to bring money to the table in order to refinance that property. So that's something I may not want to do. So that can be a plus or a minus for the buyer or for the buyer when it comes to buying subject to. All right, now here's a little nuanced difference. What about the lender? Does the lender win or does the lender lose? Well, on one hand, the lender wins because that loan is still getting paid. They're still making money based off of that original loan. They signed off on a 30-year loan 5 years ago. They've got their investors lined up that are making their return, right? But they're not making money on any taxes, any fees or application fees or higher interest rate or points. They're losing out on that opportunity. So if they were to instead enforce that due on sale clause and be ensured that they would get paid and then force them to refinance, well, then they could make more money. Again, I'm unaware of anybody ever doing that. Who knows? Things change. The other risk for the lender is the risk of non-payment. So you have a owner one, the seller, sold it to owner two, the buyer. And there's a chance that that buyer is an unscrupulous character who says, hey, I bought it. I now own the house. I'm going to mess with it. I'm going to put a tenant in there, get some cash flow for 6 months. I'm never going to pay on the mortgage. So I'm going to get all this money and then they're going to foreclose. The tenants are going to get, and I'm just going to run away, right? I'm going to run to Costa Rica with my money. The tenants get foreclosed on. They get kicked out. The bank forecloses. It's a credit hit on the first seller and everybody loses, the seller, the tenants, except for the buyer who just ran off with everybody's money and stole it and ran to Costa Rica, right? So that is absolutely a possibility. That's why I say that anybody who's buying subject to has to have the highest moral character. And it's great if they actually have a local business that you can walk into so you can look them in the eye and make sure that they have a reputation to maintain and that one little deal is not enough for them to skip the country, right? So if it's just a small portion, they're like, yeah, it's not worth it to me to not pay that. I'm just going to make this happen because that's my business, right? That's what you want. So in summary, there are a lot of great potential benefits to both buyers and sellers when it comes to subject to, but there's also some risks. And you got to know what those are. Be aware. It's not only watching videos like this or reading books or going on YouTube, but also talking with a professional as a real estate agent who knows what they're doing, possibly some other investors who've done this. Better yet, an agent investor, somebody who's done it before themselves, who's also a licensed agent, and a licensed attorney in your state who knows what they're doing and has done these before. If you're local to the Hampton Roads area, I know of 2 different attorneys that do it and do it well that I've worked with in the past on many creative deals. I can put you in touch with them so that they can offer you their advice on how to do this well, where you benefit and you do not get taken advantage of, whether you're on the buyer or the seller side. If you have any questions, give me a call.